Welcome back for another Riftbound versus video. Today I'm joined by T-Mac on the right, playing a Casino Kaisa deck, as he likes to call it, featuring Promising Future, and I am playing a more stock value Sett deck on the left. That's all about making sure our units can stick around thanks to its legend buff ability of spending it and recalling it back to the base exhausted. So a much more attrition style focused deck and being able to keep board pressure for very, very cheap cost, all things considered, but also combos very well with a lot of the sacrifice effects that we do see out of yellow. So here we are seeing one of the better turn 2 plays that you can make with this deck. Cytherea gets a buff when you play another unit, and then the Shaman can consume that buff to buff themselves, come in active, and immediately conquer that point. Now, the one thing I do want to call out here that's more interesting and aligns really well with the last spoiler video that we covered as well, Altar of Unity is surprisingly good in this deck in making sure that we have extra buffs with Cytherea, because when you play that token, Cytherea is going to get the buff. And here we see T-Mac spending the legend or exhausting legend to get us the power to go into Promising Future, and is going to windmill. What do we get? So we get a Misfortune, which is actually pretty good. The untap effect is very strong in this style of deck that you'll see come into play later. And then T-Mac is going to go once more into another Promising Future. So really digging for those big payoff units that he does have for the deck. And for us, we're just happy to see an extra card. Now, you do have to pay the power cost as you're playing these cards, so that does hurt us a little bit in terms of what we can get back. But in T-Mac's deck, they are playing cards that have very low power cost on them, but high energy cost, like the Volibear and other key ramp targets we want, so they don't mind as much. Now, here we are going to be able to get a Sett, put it right onto the base for playing it, and he is going to find that giant Volibear, which is going to apply a lot of pressure for us on the next turn. He's then going to take the Void Gate, giving himself an extra point, and also the Sentry is really annoying for us to deal with because it just gives him a free card, and we don't want him finding more Promising Futures to pull ahead. So here we get the Recruit. Cytherea is going to get their buff. We're going to restand everything. And now here's where we have an interesting choice of how we want to protect against this Volibear, which, you know, we really can't, because the when attack ability is going to just eat alive anything we throw out there. Sett himself can get buffed up very nicely if you have multiple units on the base based on his effect, but we are a bit limited in terms of how many buffs we can ultimately generate. Now, the key card that Sett wants to see is Arena Bar, and this lets you do some really interesting stuff, especially with the Orange Misfortune that we're going to talk about here shortly, but we're going to move Sett back. We know that he would die otherwise. We want to get him a buff counter. And then also with Misfortune, we have the ability to activate anything once she's going to go conquer that Void Gate. And here we have the option of how we're trying to plan spreading our buffs out. So here we could actually restand Arena Bar or a rune if we want to accelerate our game plan. Here's where I decide that, oh wait, you know what, we actually do want the buff here, because now we can put ourselves in a position where the Arena Bar can buff Misfortune and protect it against the Volibear due to Sett's legend ability, again, of spending that buff, recalling it back to base. And it's not great to be giving our opponent just a free point in that regard, but it does keep the unit around, and that is the most important part for this style of deck. So we built a much more orange focused version of Sett. I'm very excited to see what the yellow side of it does, or I should say order, to use the actual domain names, the body and order that is Sett. But I'm very curious to see again where we are about halfway through spoiler seasons to align on that. Now, T-Mac is going to go into his turn. He gets his giant Volibear, and again, very strong card itself. It's able to hold the battlefield quite well against what we have. We'd have to, you know, spend a lot of units because we can only save one of them at a time with Sett, and Volibear on attack is just going to be able to crash into anything that he really wants without the way our board is set up. So he's going to go into our Altar of Unity. It's going to immediately kill the unit. We have the option to use Sett here to protect it. However, it is a once per turn unless you also conquer in the same turn to restand Legend Sett. So we're saving this for our Misfortune, which again, as we saw in our previous turn, is a really key enabler for this strategy. Getting multiple Arena Bars is really important for spending out the buffs, and I'm sure this will become even more important as we get more spoilers down the road. Here we are going to go into a Sigil, into another Promising Future, really all in on showcasing the casino style deck that T-Mac was able to put together, keeping in mind that myself on the left hand side, we resolve our effect first, so T-Mac always gets to have the last card played, especially if it's in a roundtable setting. And here we're just trying to double check the ruling for Call of the Week versus some of these sacrifice effects. We do have to pay the power, and our card is going to resolve first, so we pay the power. We are going to get to call the Volibear, which is not targeting because it's just each player's sacrifices, so we get around that effect as well. And if we really wanted to, we could use the Sett ability here, but instead are just going to be getting rid of a different card. So now we're going to go into the Darius that he got to play for free. It is a 7 attack, and this is where we see the Misfortune really come back to the field, go back to base, and have such a strong effect. So we do have to rest our Legend Sett to get the most value out of it. But again, we're happy to protect our Misfortune and be aligned on that end. So back up to 4 runes. So again, the power cost of this deck can be a little bit painful, and I just want to highlight Sett here again for his +1 might for each buffed unit at a battlefield, and because it has tank, it has to take the damage first. We can actually just king make a battlefield here by throwing it all on Sett and having additional buffs, because we can move a unit to the battlefield, put a buff counter on it, move Misfortune to recover the arena bar, and then build up our entire board here with tokens. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a movement phase here, moving them both to the other Altar of Unity. Again, a key one for our deck. We are going to be able to get the point. And then we're going to go into challenge. Because the Sett is now bigger, because there's the buff Cytherea as well, we're able to challenge out his Darius and make sure we get the advantage that way. So very nice here that we are going to get to see the Misfortune take an additional point for us. And here's where we have a little bit of a, I have to make sure I always stack this properly in terms of how I'm spending my runes or exhausting something for the effect. So here we are just going to get the buff on Misfortune. Again, not really being able to make the most use out of this because we have to move it first. So we're gonna get the rune back, which is fine. We're at 3 runes. We just don't have much else to really leverage with it. But again, we did want that quick point. And then we're just gonna play another Cytherea, which if we are able to hold the Altar of Unity, is just going to give us another buff counter, give us 2 might, and really start to stack up those Sett abilities. And again, very strong at what it wants to be doing and trying to set up this game plan. So here's where you can really start to see that Sett, if you're not able to get rid of multiple things in a turn, they can very slowly but effectively build up their board and just have these massive might swings that the yellow Sett is really great for having a payoff. So another case where the altar is going to trigger because we're playing a token, the Cytherea is going to get the buff counter, and this is just further making the Sett larger and larger until he's just able to completely hold down a battlefield on its own. And now Misfortune here does also have ganking, so again, we do have a position here where we can go all in and just making Sett the king guardian of that battlefield, but we have to be very mindful of unchecked power. We know that T-Mac has this in his deck. However, he's just short on runes, and we know he's already played the 3 Promising Futures, so we are actually quite safe in this, and we've only played a couple games up to this point, so I wasn't sure on what other removal options he might have just to rely on and maybe chip away a couple things, but in this case, a double Sett setup is going to lock down the battlefield for us because we're able to have both Setts, you know, get the massive buff, and it's just going to be very difficult for them to counter both here. So here we're going to move Misfortune again. Again, Aquino, I kind of forget that it has the ganking ability, and I could have just moved it directly. I was trying to set up some things to where we can get the first mate, which is going to restand something. We can give it a buff, so we could have restand the Misfortune, and then activate the arena bar again. So here's where I'm backing it up and going through that sequence where it would have been better if we got an extra buff, and then Misfortune is going to stand to where we get the last movement. So this is where we're getting the first mate ability to stand something up, which then means we can move it to the battlefield. Now, again, I did misplay this. I could have just put Misfortune directly on the other battlefield. We could have had another buffed unit on there. So the correct sequence here for this battlefield should have been the Misfortune on there as well as the token, knowing that he didn't have unchecked power, and Sett would have just been a massive blocker for us to hold things down. Again, for that 8th point, as long as we can either hold it, which we're looking very good at holding it to get the 8th point and win, we're also now showing 2 tokens on the back end that if he does try to do unchecked power, if he had like a ramp or some other scenario, those 2 tokens can actually just take both battlefields and win that way as well. So having those 2 tokens in the back there is actually very, very strong for us, that we could just get the 8th point that way as well. So T-Mac here just going through the motions, showing that he has the Get Excited, which can be very, very strong at discarding some of those higher end cards that we were talking about, like the Volley Barrier that he played just to nuke something. However, we just have too much power on the battlefield that it's not going to be strong enough to clear it out, and we will win our 8th point by holding. So once again, thanks to T-Mac for recording another game with us. A lot more Riftbound content to come in the future. So make sure to like and subscribe for future content. And let me know what legends you want to see next on the channel. Stay safe, stay hydrated. See you next time.